Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Holy Cross Bands podcast. Here on the show, we take a look into the lives and achievements of college musicians who brought you the good time in different Holy Cross band ensembles during their time at Holy Cross. If I had a wooden nickel for every time I said Holy Cross in the next hour or so. Today, we are interviewing Kerry Larkin. She is from Westboro, Massachusetts, and recently graduated from Holy Cross, summa cum laude, as a part of the class of 2020 with a double major in biology and music. She participated in the Holy Cross Good Time Marching Band, Pep Band, Wind Ensemble, formerly Concert Band, Jazz Ensemble, Orchestra Ensemble, Brooks Jazz Combo, and was a Lessons in Carols student composer, along with being the ACT music director. Outside of her vast array of musical achievements on ensembles, she was a biology department research assistant, a first-year mentor, a member of XCROM, and a part of the campus liturgy, as well as the Springbrook Emotion program. I've had the absolute pleasure of having band with Kerry for, on average, 5 days a week of band for the past 2 years, and was also recruited by her and Jake Marcus to join Holy Cross Band. So this is all coming full circle, everybody. Kerry is a great person, and I'm happy to have her today. Welcome, Kerry. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Dennis. It's going to be fun.
Looking forward to it. So, guess we'll start without further ado. Could you describe your career in music from your humble beginnings, as I've read off of an Instagram of the Holy Cross Music Department Instagram post 12 years ago to now as a college graduate? What exactly drew you to being a musician?
So I've always loved music. I don't really know what other than that kind of drew me to it. I just remember when I was little, I used to just like to sing, and I actually started playing the violin in fourth grade before I started playing the trumpet, just because orchestra started before band in my school. And then I had the chance to join band in fifth grade, and I just loved the sound of the trumpet, the brilliant sound. So I joined the band and the jazz band, and I've done those two ever since. And just since then, I've loved playing music, and I love the people it drew me to, and that just kind of brought me to more ensembles. And in high school, I used to go to camps over the summer. I did the Sims program at UNH, Some Youth Music School, and I did Jazz in July at UMass Amherst. And just those chances to meet other musicians just kept me totally hooked. And I also was really lucky to be in a school with a super incredible fine arts department at Westboro with incredible teachers that really kept me involved in different groups, and he had music theory classes, which is kind of unique because not all schools have it. So just kind of that like environment really kept me loving music all through high school and set me up to join everything in college.
Honestly, went through a very similar path, and I feel like a lot of musicians can relate to that too, regardless of whether they ended up becoming professional musicians or started studying music. More often than not, there's a great handful of kids who start around like fourth, fifth grade, and they stick with it, and they end up being involved in every ensemble. To some people, whether they want to or not. I feel like it's common for brass instruments too. Trumpets, because they have a huge ego and they want to flex it off in every ensemble no matter what. Kerry has the biggest ego out of anyone in the world. And that's why she's the first person being interviewed. She's show up before anybody else. And then I feel like with low brass people, there are so few of us that we have no choice but to be in every ensemble.
Yeah. No, those brass instruments, I mean, they speak so much, and especially like outdoor groups and in different wind ensembles. Like, not saying it's better than other instruments, just that you need kind of that big brass sound. And then just like with that, like there's always such a good community in bands. I feel like you join one and it just makes you want to, stay with those people, meet other musicians, and it just like leads you to more and more groups.
Right, yeah. Because at a lot of its very core, of course, furthering musicianship and being exposed to more music literature is a big deal. But also, at its core, music is very much a social activity. So when you're in one ensemble and you know your friends are in another ensemble, there's like this impulse to also be in that group as well. And then, or on the flip side, you're in a group and you love all the people in it. And one of the incentives that drives you to be a part in another group outside of furthering your musicianship is, oh man, I get to meet more great people. People, as it's often commonly stated. Not always a fan of that term, but oh well. Also, good on you for sticking with music theory. I took music theory once in my life, and I'm not good at it.
Yeah, I really liked it. I think a sophomore year was the first time I took it, and then I took AP Music Theory the next year. And I just think it was, especially AP Music Theory, there was a lot of ear training, which I think was really helpful for jazz playing especially, and isn't like always really covered in like band as much, but is super helpful. And I think like I didn't really do any composition really in high school, but it was something I was like kind of thinking about or a little bit interested in. And I think music theory really like is the form like leads you to that in terms of thinking of like how did these composers do that. My music theory teacher, who was our head of the fine arts department sophomore year, always said, if Bach can do it, you can do it. And so we always follow Bach's, composition styles, which was fun.
Should that follow for all facets of life? Just do what Bach did and you'll be just fine.
Probably not. But
Bit of a weird guy. Honestly, good on. Do you have perfect pitch?
No, I wish I did, but I don't.
Honestly, good on anyone who has like a real good at listening to pitch. Just because of the nature of the trombone, because it's a big tuning slide.
Mm-hmm.
I like accidentally became good at listening to pitch because I'd have to tune myself all the time. Mm-hmm. And shout out to Adam Golka, our chamber orchestra director. Amazing guy.
Big shout out to Adam.
One day, one rehearsal, he asked me to fix the pitch of my note, and then out of pure luck, I did it on the first try. And he was like, "Oh my god, perfect pitch!" And I was like, "Oh, Adam, do not think that. You should not think that highly of me."
I'm so impressed by the trombone is a good example of this, and I think just string instruments in general, like the violin and cello and viola. Of like trumpet, I feel like I'm fortunate that I just have to be close to the note for the fingering to bring it to what it's supposed to be, but you guys don't have that luxury of being like kind of close and then the instrument like gets you the rest of the way there. You have to be like exactly there on fingering or the slide position, which is wild.
On the flip side, I commend anyone who plays instruments with buttons. So, as a trombone player, I look at trumpet players and I think, wow, they have to memorize so many different finger combinations. I don't know. Is there a term? Notes. Valve.
Yeah, like valve combinations.
Yeah. And I only played trombone and drums, so I've never mastered an instrument that involved buttons.
Yeah, I have the easy job there. At least I don't play a woodwind. They have a lot of options there. I only have 3.
So trumpet and you said violin and viola is what you've Violin.
Yeah, for a good 2 years there.
Gotcha. What made you stop? Just you want to focus on trumpet more, or?
Yeah, so actually in 5th grade I was in all 3. So I was in band, orchestra, and chorus. And you could do that like for that year, but then going into 6th grade you had to start choosing just with like the way the classes worked out, and there was like an extra math like program that you couldn't do if you did all 3 or if you did 2. So I ended up dropping orchestra and dropping chorus, so I did the math thing in band.
That's super funny how when you were younger you had the opportunity to be in every ensemble, and then as you moved up, because of how high school schedules worked, there was like less opportunities as you got older.
Yeah, it's just yeah, I think that's kind of it. And it's like I'm trying to think if anybody I know kept with all 3 like in their own way going through, and I don't think really did, but I think it's because like the way our school was like structured, at least like because they were all like a class, and then like once you got to high school, it's a class you had like every day of the week. So it was just not easy to fit
Right.
like all those things in together.
Yeah. And the largest sympathies to all the students who have to go through this. And I feel like you've alluded to it, and this was definitely something, a struggle that I've had and my high school friends have had was you had your high school schedule, and especially junior senior year when you had to take your AP classes, which were extremely important for college.
Mm-hmm.
And some kid for I say for you half the time a kid would just be like, yeah, I need to think about college, and I'm gonna take the classes I need. Responsible adult kid has their future plan type of person.
Mm-hmm.
A kid like me, and maybe there's people who can relate to this, or I'm just crazy. I remember in my high school, concert band and jazz band were classes you could take for credit. I know very often concert band is more often than not a class for a lot of public high schools.
Mm-hmm.
And jazz band's usually a club. And then for a lot of schools, you couldn't do marching band unless you were in concert band.
Huh.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then,
we were similar. We had two bands that were classes. You were either in concert band or wind ensemble, and then marching band was a club and jazz band was a club. I don't think you had to be in band to do marching band, but I don't think there was anyone that was in marching band that didn't do band in school.
similar people, and like you may as well, like we talked about earlier. But I remember struggling because I needed to take some AP class, which I don't even remember, because that was just a long time ago. And I had to give up like jazz band for it. And for
no.
any other kid, it'd be like, dude, take the AP class. For my guidance counselor, they'd be like, this class is technically more important. And then the band director would be like, I respect your decision, but I also really need you for this ensemble, for instrumentation and the whole like. So that was always a struggle for me, and I'm sure maybe you can relate in some way.
Yeah, I know some people that came up, like, should I drop the ensemble to do like an AP class? I can't imagine like doing, like, even if I'd kept playing trumpet in the other things, I was really always grateful for having that band during the day, especially because I had it like in the middle of the day. I think it was third period or something, and it was like really fun to just like go like see all your friends for the period and play music. It was such a change from all the other classes of the day. And I feel like like you do need to think about your future and stuff, but I kind of think high school is, still a time to have your foot in a lot of different things, like
Absolutely.
specialize more in college.
Yeah.
Since we go to a liberal arts school, that idea of like not specializing too much is like prominent here too. And I know that's not really in everybody's college plans, but I was definitely happy to keep all that in high school.
We'll go back to this in a little bit because there were a couple other questions I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to ask you. But in your musical career, who have been your biggest influences, regardless of that being life, academic, or music?
Mm-hmm. I think there's so many in each of those categories. I think generally in life, my family's been huge influences on me, especially my parents, and just how to be super hardworking and super supportive. They're great role models in that regard. And I think also my sister's been a huge role model for me. She's 2 years older, and she has played the flute through, she joined when she was in 5th grade, and is an absolutely incredible flautist and played through college, and is also a super brilliant scholar. So kind of in both those, the academic and musical fields, she was always a big role model through middle school, high school, college.
I like your proper use of flautist.
Oh, thank you.
I feel like that's it flies by a lot of people, under the people's radar, myself included. I always say flutist.
It's a fun word to say. I'm not going to pass up a chance to say
flautist. Because I'm a music major, I know the proper terminology.
And it doesn't roll off the tongue as well for other instruments. Like, I wouldn't say I'm a trumpetist. That's awkward. I'd say I'm a trumpet player, but flautist is lovely.
Do you ever say trumpeteer?
Not seriously. Ironically.
trombones are pretty much just trombone players unless you're 12 years old. Specifically, when I was in 12 years old, people would say, "Oh, what do you play? What instrument do you play?" I say, I'm a tromboner, trombone player." Whew,
Yikes.
I made it this far. We go to the same school. uh, so, speaking of school, um, what made you choose Holy Cross? And two-part question: did you know you wanted to participate in music when entering college?
Yeah, so in terms of choosing Holy Cross, I was pretty sure, like in the college application process, that I wanted a smaller school with like small classes and that good like faculty, interaction. Um, and what really stuck out for Holy Cross for me was the commitment to academics. I wasn't sure coming in. I thought I may want to be pre-med. I wasn't sure. Um, so there having like a really strong science program was definitely a factor for me. And I actually missed accepted student day. I couldn't go because we had our band trip that only happened like every 2 years. So I was on that.
Gotta
So
gotta miss skipping over things as a band, right?
I know it was funny because like I it kind of like we signed up for the trip like way in advance because it was like over April break and it was in Virginia, Williamsburg. And I hadn't had a
Wow,
big trip yet since like being in high school. So like signed up way in advance and I remember like getting closer, like my friends were talking about like their like trips and I was like, "Oh, do you have any like trips over that break?" And I was like, maybe, but like we're already signed up, like we're gonna go. So that was the only one I think I ended up missing because of that. But so my parents went to accepted student days without me. Um, had lots of great things to say. Went to
good
like
for
the
you.
band's table and such.
Good for your
So then,
parents.
yeah. So then I did a shadow day when I got back and just followed somebody around like all day. And that was what like really sold me on the school. Just seeing the whole day was like people being like super friendly to each other, like saying hello, holding the door for each other, just like typical Holy Cross stuff.
Hmm.
I was like, this is like such a tighter community than I've seen at other schools. And even like the person I was shadowing like had some science classes but wasn't really a music person, but we were like having lunch in Kimball. He was like, "Oh, this is my friend so and so, like she does music." And she was like, "Oh my god, like I can totally take you up and like show you like a tour of the hall and stuff. Like I have a little bit of time." And just like that, like commitment to helping me, and I wasn't even like a student at the school yet. I was like, this is like such a great place. So that was what sold me on Holy Cross. And another thing that I thought was unique about Holy Cross was that they had such a well-rounded bands program. This is kind of getting into your second question, but a lot of the other schools I looked at of comparable size had either like just an orchestra and a chorus or like just a jazz ensemble. It didn't have a full like concert
Hmm.
band, much less like marching or pep band. And I think that's partially because Holy Cross is D1 and is small, that it has like marching and pep band. But I knew I definitely wanted to keep playing, and when I found out I could play in bands still in that like kind of regard, that sold me. And Dr. Riley, who was the director at the time, like had a phone call with me and like told me all about the bands, like asked me the stuff I'd played in high school, was like
Hmm.
super interested in me again, like even though I wasn't a student there yet. So having like bands and that great community and having that community within the band was
Hmm.
what sold me.
Community goes such a long way, and that's something that
Mm-hmm.
both Holy Cross captures exceptionally. Easily one of the best parts about Holy Cross is its community.
Mm-hmm.
So, in regards to bands, the best bands are more. It's almost synonymous to being a great community as well, because a lot of what makes band enjoyable for a lot of people, is the people within the group.
Exactly. And like when you think about that, just like thinking about marching band alone, like I don't want to go in band camp, stand out on the field for 8 hours in the burning sun with people I hate. Like that's
Mm.
no fun. But because there's like, it's so much fun. Like everybody in it is great, cares about each other. Like I'll go stand out on the field for 8 hours in the sun for those people.
Yeah, it's always both in high school and college. It was a great way to meet people ahead of time because you're
Hmm.
forced to come early, and it
Yeah.
sounds much worse than it actually is because band camp. I've had 7 band camps and I still have not had a bad one.
Hmm. They're always fun. It's
Yeah.
always so much bonding. And it's also like, um, my friend Colin, who who graduated in 2019, I remember he said like one band camp, like it is like, it's so long and your mouth hurts from playing like the trumpet all the time. And he's like, it's so cool to be able to just like only have bands to do, like to be at Holy Cross, but like to not have any other commitments, to like just get to play music for a whole week is super cool.
Yeah. And it's so weird. Like, it's just like, if you describe to someone, it's like, we're out in the sun playing for over 8 hours a day. And it's like, are you a masochist? Because that sounds awful. But no, it's a good time, I promise.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to something you said before, in regards to, it's really impressive that Holy Cross, for its size, has this many ensembles. Not just Holy Cross bands, but such an appreciation for music arts in the college. And this is part of me is saying this as a bit of a history nerd, history major, but not only do we have a marching band, we have an old marching band.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was founded in, I mean, you'd know this, you're the history nerd, but 1845, I
think,
believe.
Yeah, I think this year's the 175th anniversary of the originally college brass, now Holy Cross bands.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, a lot of that information is undocumented, or I don't know where it is.
Mm-hmm.
Jake said in the senior video that it was like the college. He said it was the college brass, and then he just skipped all the way to like or when Dr. Riley was and before Dr. Jennings was director. So
yeah, but even having like the like concert band, now wind ensemble, like that group for like classical band is something that I really didn't find at a lot of schools, which is like you would think is kind of weird, but even at Holy Cross it's like pretty recent. I think it was founded the year before I came, so it was like 2015, 2016. And that's like, I feel like such an important group to have, especially like at Holy Cross, since it doesn't meet a ton. Like you get a lot of people that just like to play and don't want to be in a group with a super high time commitment, but still want to play with each other. And that's why there's such a high turnout for that group too.
It really is a perfect time. But now it's Mondays and Fridays, but before the time of this recording, Fridays from 4:30 to 6, it was literally the perfect time where 99% of people are done with classes and no one's out socializing or doing any college-y stuff. Like that time where no one's doing anything. So
right.
That was perfect time for wind ensemble.
Yeah.
So aside from joining music ensembles, did you know you wanted to major in music going in? Because I know you said you're thinking about pre-med and now you're biology. So what's the story behind the music major?
Yeah, so I was pretty sure I wanted to major in music going in. And like at other schools I played around, like if they had a music minor, I thought like, okay, maybe I'd do that, like a little less of a time commitment. So, but Holy Cross doesn't have the minor, they only have the major. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty interested in like taking the classes, and I liked the music theory, like in high school, we talked about. So I kind of jumped in doing it, but was trying to be cognizant of if I enjoyed the classes as much as I enjoyed the performing, since I'd had more of that. And because I know the double major is a time commitment, and you have to sacrifice some things or put in extra work to sometimes make the scheduling happen. But every class I took, I absolutely loved. I thought the theory was super interesting. I'd never taken history before, and those classes were also great. And then I loved the electives and taking lessons through the department. So everything kind of continued to click for me as I went through. So I ended up with the major, and I'm happy I did.
Nice. And honestly, me personally, I feel like anyone who studies in depth and understands music history, and especially music theory, I hold in extremely high regard. Because I'm someone who does a bunch of ensembles, but I don't know a lick of music theory. And it's hard. And I really have to commend any musician who goes out of their way to understand what is commonly described as, and it describes music theory perfectly, is essentially another language that helps you understand, appreciate, and express music in such a deeper way, which I can definitely see in being in ensembles with people like you and Jake and all the other seniors and everyone, like improv. Everyone's so good at improv. And like 10 years of trombone. I still don't know how to. Although I am taking jazz improv this fall. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
I think
honestly, yeah, good on you guys.
yeah, I think what's so cool about music is like if you like learn, even if you don't know how to play an instrument, but if you do know how to play an instrument, like you can engage with the music. Like there's kind of a like anybody at any level can engage with music, but the more you study it, it's sort of like there's like this infinite like depth you can go in terms of like how you think about it, how you engage with it.
Mm.
Which like for me, I really enjoyed like putting in the time to think that way. And like improv is like just like one example. Like the other thing about being at Holy Cross that's really awesome is like so anyone can take the improv classes, which is great, and then you're engaging with Mike Monaghan, who's
Great
this
guy.
crazy famous, incredible musician, and you literally get to play with his colleagues at the end of the semester who are instrumentalists for the Boston Pops and the BSO, which is absolutely crazy. And anyone who plays an instrument can sign up for that class, which is such an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, my neighbor who is on the football team plays violin. He did jazz improv with the violin, and
Nice.
good on Mike for, of course, teaching it, but also being accepting of a student who had the enthusiasm to learn jazz improv and had instrument. Because I know band directors can be picky with instrumentation sometimes. So that would, yeah, it's really cool. Heard only good things about the class, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And I still have to do Mike's assignment that he gave us like a month ago. I keep saying I'm gonna do it, but yeah, we'll get there. Also, super funny. Just a small quirky aside. The week when after we were told we had to move out and we had the last jazz band session, I went in thinking, oh, it's just the jazz band hanging out. I had no idea we were playing. So then when you guys took out Federal Blues Express and started jamming out, I actually had no.
Last time.
I think it was obvious, but I had no idea what I was doing. But yeah, no understanding music theory goes a long way. It saves you humiliation from if you're ever in an impromptu jam session.
There's no wrong notes in jazz, though. It's colorful notes.
No wrong notes in jazz, but it's a good thing to get behind. As someone who I have found the wrong notes in jazz. Could I teach you about it? I couldn't tell you. So you're in a ton of ensembles, which we mentioned before, and you're a bio and a music double major. So that's insane. Like people listen to, I think like you and I and like Jake, Colin, Emily Vogel, a bunch of the sophomores, a bunch of seniors were all people who did every single ensemble.
Mm-hmm.
It's like in a casual conversation with someone who doesn't do music, we list all these groups and they'll say, oh my God, how do you have all the time for all that? And that's a good question that I still don't have the answer to, but maybe you do. So what I wanted to ask was, as someone who did so much in college, how did you manage to juggle everything all at once? What was a day in the life of Kerry Larkin in college?
So I think for me, the key to like juggling everything, and it wasn't always pretty or perfect. Like there were definitely, overwhelming times or stressful times, but I was definitely a planner going into college. And I think college has just made me even more of a planner in terms of scheduling things. I like have my, paper agenda book and I use it all the time.
Your agenda's a book?
It is. It's not just a document like some people's.
I'm sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, so I was big on scheduling everything, especially I think the things that aren't on other people's schedules that are like only on my time. So things like practicing and going to lab and doing homework, because if I didn't, I found it was very easy to bump those things or be like, oh, I'm going to do this instead. And then also just finding like time of things that worked for me. So in terms of like scheduling my classes, I found I really liked to have my classes in the morning. which didn't always happen, especially with labs and things, but as much as possible to take my classes in the morning. And then I'd usually try to, if I had like a break between classes, like schedule, okay, like 10 to 11 is going to be my practice hour in the band room, or on one day a week I'd put my lesson at that time instead. And then by kind of like getting that over with in the morning, or not over with, but putting it in the morning, the afternoon could be a little more open for like, maybe I'll go to office hours or I'll go to lab. And then kind of the nice thing about being in so many ensembles is that they're not, none of them are ever really on the same day, which,
Yeah.
you know, so it's kind of nice to have that like built in, like, okay, I'm going to have rehearsal in the evening. And I found on the days where I was on top of my time and like had gotten things done, it's really easy to see that as like a break, and a time to, you know, have fun with friends at rehearsal and stuff. And then after all that, like kind of homework for me was always sort of a like end of the day kind of thing, which was actually kind of nice after like running to different things. Like it's kind of nice to like settle in the library or settle wherever I am, be like, okay, we're not moving for a couple hours, like to get things done. And in terms of like being social and stuff, I think like on days where I'm like more efficient with my time, it's easier to like take breaks and do fun things with friends, or everyone's doing homework, so to do homework with friends, even if it's not quite as effective as if you were doing it alone, like not like isolating yourself from other people. So that's kind of, I guess, a general typical like weekday. Ideally, I don't think it always worked out to that at all, but
Oh no.
that was the goal.
But organizing,
Yeah.
was a super long way. And honestly, you say it so casually, but I really do. I commend you. I commend you and anyone else, not even just music people, but D1 athletes. Though a very large portion of Holy Cross people who do like a million clubs at once. I commend anyone who has masterfully pulled off juggling such a hectic schedule all at once, because people going to college, and even people who are currently in college, sometimes there's like an underlying fear, like, oh man, classes are my priority. And academics are always priority. And it's like, oh, I don't know if I have the time to do this, or I'm hesitant to do this, especially prominent with first years. I'm sure both you and I are recruitment managers, and just we always have to make the pitch like you can do it as long as you're good at organizing. And band helps you prepare to be organized in such a way, because rehearsals, lessons, practicing personally, you're just like a form of self-discipline to make sure that you get everything done. Although 12 years of musician, I'm still not good at it. But also, I feel like what helps, and you brought up how it's relaxing to come back after a long day, after not moving, and just sit down in the library in your special seat in Dinan at Liam. Yeah, after a long day, and it's almost relaxing to do your homework. And hearing you say that out loud, it sounded crazy, but I feel like that's something that a lot of students can relate to. Like homework is almost a way of relaxing after doing like a million things at once. And then going into, again, those million things at once. I feel like part of what makes it easy is because in band, a lot of the times you're pretty much just working with your friends, and music is fun. And one of the things I've taken away is that, oh, it sounds like I'm doing a lot. And I guess on paper, it is doing a lot. It's a lot of work, but it's music. So it really just feels like I'm having fun most of the time.
Right. And that's super important. Like if I like really didn't like any of the things I do, if I didn't find them rewarding, it would be such a drag to like pull myself to different things and do it. But like, since it's so rewarding, and there's still obviously like a threshold you pass, like if you're in too many things, even if they're rewarding, it's too much. But I found like the amount for me didn't really feel that way, because like I enjoyed everything I was doing for the most part.
Right. Enjoying things goes a long way. You should never do something for the sake of a resume. You should do something if you genuinely enjoy doing it, and it's because you enjoy doing it that your work will show off to any future opportunities, employment, such and so.
Right. And also, like, going back to what you said, like, just quickly about like the doing homework and how it like can be relaxing. Like obviously there's a limit to that too. Like if you put everything off and then then it's not relaxing no matter what, it's just stressful. But I also think like having like, even if there were days where I didn't really end up doing much work, I feel like I was never really one to like have in my head like I only do work on like these days. Like I think like breaking things up into little chunks also was like super helpful. I can think of a lot of, maybe not finals weeks, although those two, but like pre-finals weeks when everything is due and it's like very stressful, like looking at my planner and being like, this is not possible. There's like concerts here and there. There's like rehearsals. There's so much homework, but like definitely taking things day by day was, I mean, it all got done. I got my degree. So like,
yeah, there you go.
It happens. It'll get done.
It will get done, and it can get done. And
right, exactly.
And we mentioned how like you come back after a long day and homework is almost relaxing. And you mentioned the famous pre-finals where everything's due at once. Especially for music people, there always is a million concerts those week too. One of my favorite personal traditions at Holy Cross is lessons and carols week, because we have all the rehearsals and then long dress rehearsals where the brass, like you and I, would just sit there and we'd have to wait because they have to run every part of the program and we weren't in a majority of it. But we still had to be there for all those rehearsals, which could go anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours. And we had the concert. And I love lessons and carols. Playing in the chapel with so many people, with such an intensive audience, and the acoustics are amazing and the music's great. It's easily
such an incredible event.
Honestly, one of my favorite performances ever. But the performance aside, the satisfaction of finishing a huge concert during such a busy week, there's such a huge feeling of accomplishment. And I wonder if you could attest to that in any way.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And there have been like some like years, I guess, looking into the fall, like thinking like, okay, am I like am I too overwhelmed? Are things okay? Like that was kind of one of the reasons why I didn't continue to be ACT music director for my senior year. I was like, I think it was just a little bit too much with everything else. But lessons and carols is something I kind of laugh at because I'm like, I feel like if I wasn't so in love with that as an event, it would be something that would make sense to not do because it's such a busy week of the semester.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. It's so incredible to bring so many people together like that. I think it's one of the biggest events at Holy Cross, and to have like so many musical groups together, and the music is so much fun to play and you get to work with so many different people. And it's just such a feel-good event. Like it's celebratory in nature, and then you're right, you add on that satisfaction of like you made it through this week. And there's such an element of solidarity too. I mean, like I remember I had like, you know, my Machiavelli discourses on Libby book out. I'm trying to like take notes for my essay. I'm sure somebody else was like reading something on their phone like during long breaks the brass had in rehearsal. Like it's definitely, you're working through a lot of things. But there's like that sense of solidarity that you're all doing it together, and you're all like so excited about this event to like bring it together. So I think it's like one of the hardest weeks of the year, and it's also one of the best weeks of the year.
Honestly, yeah. And you mentioned in planning for the year in advance, and it would sound so easy to scrap something like that, saying, okay, I enjoyed it, but I don't want to do it again. But for the reasons you mentioned, people in music always end up going back to something, even if they know it's maybe takes up too much time. But there's always there's always a reason to come back to something in music. Before, earlier in the interview, the talk, I don't know what but we mentioned Holy Cross as a liberal arts school, where it takes that mission very seriously. With a liberal arts school, and especially as a Jesuit school. And Jesuit education embodies values such as cura personalis, or men and women, to and for others. So with that, how would you say music embodies or capsizes on that idea of cura personalis and within the mission of a Jesuit education?
Yeah, so I think for cura personalis, like I think music and all arts in general do so much to engage like the artistic side of people's brains and their creative element. And I think that's both for the performers, like putting out the work, and for the audience, like receiving it and reacting to it. And I think that's like a real gap you miss kind of without the arts, in terms of this idea of like caring for the whole person. Like that's an element of the person that you need to feed and nourish. And then I think also with the performers, like we've talked so much already about this, about that sense of the community. And I think in terms of being a part of that community and being something bigger than yourself, you're doing a lot to kind of see yourself in a different way and care for yourself as a whole person kind of in that way too. And then I think for the mission of the school, ultimately as a performer and as a member of a band or an ensemble, you're bringing music to the community, you're serving others in that way to, you know, bring this art to them. And then I also think, again, going back to like that community of the band, like in terms of being like with others, like you're being with the other members in the group. And I mean, you know this probably as well as I, like being an underclassman in the band and coming in, like there's automatically like in the marching band, just say like 35 mentors willing to give you help. Oh, I can introduce you to that professor. Or let me tell you about this class. Like
That's a really great way of putting it. Just like 35 mentors. That's a great way of putting it.
yeah. And just like that first day of band camp, like everyone's like introducing themselves to you, like what do you want to study? Where are you from? What do you like? Just like really want to like help you on your way at Holy Cross, like even though you've just started. And I feel like that continues like through, and even like graduating, like I've been like talking to people like, oh, I'm gonna be moving to like the DC area or Bethesda, and they're like, oh, I know this person who's like moving down there, like you should connect with them. Like there's like that element of like helping each other, like at Holy Cross and like now as I'm leaving. So I think that's like the epitome of being with each other.
Yeah, that was all incredibly well said. And music definitely does go a long way and embodies all those values perfectly for the very reasons you said.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you feel this way too. Maybe you might have thought this as a recruitment manager, and I want to see if you thought of this too. But I almost feel that a lot of the time, music as an art, it's a highly appreciated at Holy Cross,
Mm-hmm.
like because of the liberal arts education and everything. More often than not, the hesitancy of joining a music group, where that be, that can come from a lot of different reasons. Whether it be a student who is wary of time, or they want to move on, or maybe they didn't feel like they were that good at their instruments, so they wanted to move on.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectly respectable and reasonable situations, all good reasons to not continue to do something. You shouldn't do something unless you love it. But I feel like sometimes, I want to see if you agree with this too, that music, not that it's specifically said to be something that isn't something to serve others, but goes on the wayside. Like it's not something that people would traditionally expect to be a form of serving others. I want to see if you've ever thought that or perceived it like that anyway. Obviously, it does serve people very well, but
Yeah, I think it's easy to not like group it into the typical, like when you think of like serving others, I feel like I think of like, I don't know, like the image of like using your hands to like serve someone is like something that like comes to mind to me. So I feel like things you like do, I guess more directly or more like interacting in a direct way than like just sound kind of coming to someone is what I think of in terms of serving others. But I think music like definitely like is in that category. And I think we're actually seeing that more now, I think, with the pandemic and everything going on with COVID than we've seen in the past, just with so at Holy Cross, like thinking of those like videos we've made like to
what's
bring
COVID?
music to the community. But
What's COVID? I'm sorry.
um and then also like I've seen like just like different videos on the news here and there. Like there was somebody who I guess was like every time you saw like a 2020 sign on somebody's like door would like stand outside and like play Pomp and Circumstance on, I think it was a trombone. I could be wrong though. Like I think
Oh yeah,
the
I
idea of
did see
like
that video.
Yeah, like I think the
Yeah.
idea of like using music to like bring joy to people is like even more prominent now in like I guess informal ways now that it can't really be there in the typical way it's been. And I think it's almost like more appreciated now that it's not as like prominent, I guess.
Mhm. That's yeah. Again, incredibly well said. I never thought about it that way, but um, this, relating it back to COVID is a really good point. I never saw it that way. How in light of the pandemic, so many people are becoming more creative.
Hmm.
Like I almost took that for granted. Like I saw that same pomp and circumstance video you mentioned,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh, that's a cool thing. But you know, a lot of people have lost jobs in this pandemic, and it has hit the arts community in such a way. But yeah, now that you've brought it up, a lot of musicians and a lot of people are getting really creative and, like you said, bringing joy in
Hmm.
truly strange times. So yeah, another, yeah, another really great point. Plus, you finished college and you've won a bunch of awards and recognitions for service. So, people, if you don't think music is service, you should just look around you and take into account people like Kerry, because it's definitely possible. In talking about fields of study, you are a music and biology double major, and those are two very different fields of study.
Hmm.
So this is a bit of a strange question, but would you say the practices in one field have helped you benefit the other and vice versa?
Yeah, I think they definitely, so to reiterate what you said, they're definitely very different fields. And I feel like I've had um, people ask me, like, oh, are you interested in like music therapy or like neuroscience and music, like kind of things that like very directly like combine the two? Um, I don't not really. um, but I think there are definitely some like broader commonalities between them that it's been like really rewarding to do both. And I think like back to what we said about this idea of like cura personalis and like hitting like kind of both sides of the brain has also been really rewarding. Um, I think one of the major similarities between them is this idea of communication. Because when we're performing, in effect, you're communicating the music and what you want the audience to get out of the music, or how you perceive it at least. Um, and I think doing my junior recital last year was for me like one of the ways I had to think most about communication, both in like picking what music I wanted to play, how I played it, how I talked in between like sets and stuff. So there's a lot there. And then communication likewise is so important in science, in writing, in presenting like verbally, giving presentations. So I think being comfortable communicating in both regards in front of people, there's kind of some synergy there in how they work together. Um, and also, um, there's definitely a lot of creativity necessary in both music and in biology, especially in research, to kind of think of new ideas, how to think of things, how to do things. But also, I think something I don't think about quite as often with music, but it's something that is definitely there, is a persistence in being super detail oriented, and really working, especially like in my lessons in solo repertoire, like working really hard to get a passage like note for note and rhythm for rhythm as it's supposed to be before you can get to that creative like kind of next level. And I think that kind of regimented persistence in terms of like learning music is also like kind of the way my brain works in terms of learning like the details of a cellular pathway in biology too. So I think that kind of like um I don't know, repetition and looking at things at like a small scale to the bigger whole is something that's definitely been worked on in both majors for me.
CCD: communication, creativity, and detail orientation.
Yes, you got it.
Honestly, I've um both in respect to double majors like you. A lot of music majors happen to be double majors at Holy Cross. A lot of people have had the great opportunity because of the liberal arts curriculum to double major. And I've always thought that's always been a thought. So I'm really glad I had the chance to ask you this. And you had an amazing answer. You had the chance to ask you, oh, how have you connected these two fields of study? Which is again one of the points of a liberal arts education.
Hmm.
And I really wanted to focus on one of the points you said, which was communication, which was extremely well said, and it really brought me back to when I was in an honor band. Which, by the way, I hated, but that's I hated honor bands, but that's a story for another time. But I had mad respect for every director. I think that was about the only parts of honor bands I like was working with such distinct people in music. And as a last words before the performance, our director said, "Music teaches you the most important lesson you need to learn in life, and that is listening. You know,
Hmm.
you're listening to your ensemble, and that goes in a very technical level. You know, tuning, pitch,
Right.
volume, but also listening to your teammates, listening to what's going on around you, being able to interpret those situations, all solved just by listening carefully. Listening carefully can help you with detail orientation and help you become more creative. So that was kind of like so cool how you emulate. We're talking about a very similar idea to a previous band director I had, and both said it in completely different ways, but you got the same point across. If you ever thought about being a band director, you probably.
Yeah, no, those are all definitely super important. And like you said, like the benefit of like being at a liberal arts school is it's possible to like see those lessons in the different fields and do like the double major. But what I think is also really awesome about Holy Cross is that I don't really feel like I sacrificed like learning other disciplines just to do the double major, which is like something I was wary of in like kind of planning out my time. But I think I'll just do a complete plug for Holy Cross, but I can. I
That's
think
okay.
the whole like idea of the common requirements, like I think looking at them initially, it can seem like it's kind of a drag of like, oh, I have to fill all these credits. How am I going to do that? But it really does, I think, push you to do like I knew I wanted to take a different variety of classes, and all it does is kind of just like edge me to do that and not to like fall back on that
Mm,
promise to myself, I guess. So I think that's like another super awesome element of the education there.
yeah, it can seem like a drag sometimes, but you really do stumble upon all of these great fields. You learn more. You have an amazingly small chance to interact with all of them and be able to connect all these different ideas together. So
Hmm.
again, very well put.
Thank you.
Um, we mentioned before that you were a student composer for the awesome Lessons and Carols.
Hmm.
You debuted a piece entitled Luminous Voluntary, and I'll never forget. I think I was talking to Liam. We were both rehearsing, and he was like, I came up with that title.
He did. I was deciding between luminous and another light word. I think it was illuminating, maybe. It's like, which one of these do you think sounds better? And he was like, luminous. I was like, it does. We'll go with that one.
I thought I thought that was a really funny story. And then the piece was absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I wanted to ask you, what was the process of composing a piece like Luminous Voluntary? Like,
Yeah. So it was definitely, it felt like kind of a long process, like going back and forth, like getting feedback and changing it and stuff. So like general timeline. So I started in like early summer 2019, and then um I don't know when I submitted my final draft, but it was enough like time before the event that we could learn it. So I think it was probably October, like after fall break, that it was like completely done. So it was a couple of months, and the piece is pretty short, so it's only about 2 minutes long. So kind of made me appreciate how long it takes to do a very long work of composing. But it was definitely a very fun and challenging process. And for me, it kind of started with I knew it was like the format was going to be like a fanfare for three trumpets and organ. That was kind of part of like the commission from Professor Martin to do it, and I knew I wanted it to generally be very brilliant and celebratory because it's such a celebratory event. And the name Luminous Voluntary I didn't come to until the end, but I think that idea of like a light and the light coming is really central to like the idea of the advent of lessons and carols, and kind of like Christ coming and being a light in the darkness, and also was like kind of the mood I wanted to get with the piece. So kind of with that like mood in mind, I had that, and then I had the idea that I wanted it to start with just the trumpets and then go into like a melody, and then somewhere in there I wanted there to be an organ interlude alone, and then I wanted to come back to the melody and modulate it up a whole step to kind of increase this like enthusiasm, as it's like the prelude for the thing. So that was all I knew. And so I came up with the melody first, and then was kind of like playing around with chords to fill it and stuff. And I would send Professor Martin my updates once a month in the summer, and she would send me back like, okay, maybe think about this voicing change, or I like this. And she also sent me some different examples of like brass ensemble playing, and to think about what intervals sound best to voice the trumpets in, and considerations for it being played in the chapel and that like big open space, like what to think about in terms of articulations and stuff like that. So she was absolutely instrumental during the entire process. And then when I got back to campus, I continued meeting with her, and then Professor Orell and Lawrence Rosania, and then on the organ side, especially Michelle Sacco and Dr. Menendez, were super, super important to the process, because as you may have guessed, I was a little bit better at writing the trumpet parts than the organ part because I knew very little about the organ. So Michelle had helped me at the beginning of the summer, like showed me some parts, generally like this is how organ is written for, and like things to think about. But then when I got back to campus, they were super helpful in like taking what I'd written and helping me make it a little bit more like appropriate for the organ. And then they helped with kind of the final touches of like adding in the stops and the pedals and different things like that. So it was overall a super rewarding process, but definitely came with the help of a lot of different people throughout the way, which was cool to get to work with them in that way and kind of like expand what I'd learned about music in the classroom and from playing so much, and put it into my own work for the first time.
Hearing that, it sounds really cool. That whole process. So you mentioned that like you sent Dr. Martin updates throughout the summer, and Michelle showed you how the organ worked early in the summer. So was the writing process from June to December?
Yeah, I'd say probably June to October, probably late October, because Professor Martin wanted me to come like into September with a full draft that we would then edit, to make sure there was plenty of time. Because if I'd finished it like the week of lessons and carols, that obviously wouldn't be helpful for like for learning the piece before then. So yeah, it was probably June to late October.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like with the kind of orchestra, big band, concert band kind of music, people play it, people listen to it, people love it. It's not always taking into account the process of writing music. And like Nick Rockwood and I, for people listening, he's my roommate and a fellow member of the band.
Mm-hmm.
We'd write music together, like just for a rock band, and then
Mm-hmm.
lyrics, and then he'd put the chords together. I am not as much a part of this process as I might be making it out to be. Nick does a lot of the work, and again, Nick is super talented, and I have to commend him and you and everyone ever who writes music. And for people who, they got the chords, they got the lyrics, and then they kind of line them up. I've never, and I feel like not always taken into account. I never knew how long it took to compose and arrange a piece like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, it definitely did. And like along with the process in general, I think it highlights something else that I really liked about Holy Cross is like music ensembles throughout, which is that because it's like a smaller school, and not that the ensembles are super small, but they're like everyone kind of knows each other. Like it's nice that like the instructors will know like, oh, I'm a trumpet player, oh, I can do this, I'm gonna pick repertoire that features like this person that's strong on that instrument or that instrument. And for this, like typically there's usually one student composer for lessons and carols, and it's for the chorus, and it's an application process. So I applied because I was interested in the composing, but I had obviously pretty limited choral experience. So Rose Grosskopf was selected and wrote a beautiful piece for the chorus, as you know. But I was so excited when Professor Martin like knew that I play trumpet, and she was like, I would love to like commission you as well to do this completely different thing that no one's really done before for it. So that was like, it was so cool to like have somebody know me that well and to like give me this chance. Even though like, because
You're
I was
famous. They're coming to you.
have this like and I have like trumpet background, which was like kind of unique for I guess the people applying for it. So, and then just like to work with me through the whole process super closely, even though like I'm not in choir, like I don't see her on the day to day, but I did when I was when I was working on the piece. So really big like credit for her for giving me the chance on it, and just showing how cool the Holy Cross community is, that there's so much trust, and like that it's a little bit smaller, everybody so well.
Yeah. Again, best part about Holy Cross is the people and the
Yep.
music department. Dr. Martin's awesome. Everyone in the music department is really great.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned how your piece was you wanted to be bright and you wanted to be a celebration, and all that came across really well. It was a really cool piece.
Thank you.
So close to wrapping up, I wanted to ask, what are your post-college plans and ambitions, both career and music-wise?
Okay, so I'll start with generally post-college and career-wise plans, I guess. So for next year, I've accepted a position at the National Institutes of Health as a post-baccalaureate research trainee, which I'm really excited about. So I'm going to be working in a lab that studies rare genetic diseases in the model organism C. elegans, which I work at or work with in my lab at Holy Cross. So I'm excited to keep doing that and keep doing biomedical research. And kind of long term, I hope at this point to earn a PhD in either genetics or molecular biology and keep doing either research or maybe be involved in education, or both. We'll see. And then in terms of music, I definitely want to keep playing. That's totally, in my line of sight for what I want to keep doing in terms of keep playing both classical music and jazz, and hopefully join an ensemble or maybe keep doing solo gigs where I can find them. And definitely kind of as I've wrapped up at Holy Cross, it's definitely shown me that just because like I've earned the degree doesn't mean there's not more to learn. And I think having more time to practice and stuff now that like we're still in quarantine and like there's still the virus, like I've been kind of breaking out like more jazz standards and stuff than I've used to. And I've definitely have more things that I want to keep learning and practicing. So I'm excited to keep doing that.
That's awesome. Honestly, congratulations.
Thank you.
And good luck with everything you're planning to pursue. And congrats on graduating.
Thank you.
Most of all. So thank you very much for your time tonight, Kerry. The tradition we have at football games is that the announcer will announce the Good Time Marching Band, and then they'll add a little stinger, a little addition to the Good Time Marching Band title. Stuff like Cool Beans and a bunch of other in-jokes have appeared on the title. So you can say it now, or I can announce it the next time I interview someone. But what are you going to add to Holy Cross Band's podcast?
Okay, I think I have one now. Do the Holy Cross Band's Downbeat with Alumni podcast.
Downbeat with Alumni podcast. I love it. So thank you very much for listening to Holy Cross Band's podcast. Oh God, I'm going to mess it up. Downbeat with the Alumni podcast, right?
Yes.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you, Kerry, and thank you, people, for listening. All right. Bye.
Thanks, Dennis.